What is going on, everybody out there? Fascinating Graveyard here today. Evergreen Cemetery, East Los Angeles, California. A bit of warning for you guys out there. If you plan on burying your loved ones at this cemetery, please remember this is a BYOW cemetery, meaning bring your own water, because this place ain't getting any water. It looks like somebody here is watering this place fairly often. However, right here, and as you see through the video, this place ain't getting any water. I've been here now in this area for 2 months or so, about a month and a half, 2 months. It has not rained one time, which is good if you have an electric scooter, but it's bad if you're grass. In today's video, we're going to be visiting the grave of James Herman Banning. He is the first black person in our nation's history to get a pilot's license. And also, he's the first black person to fly a plane across the continental United States. And, well, I'm going to tell you his story and his tragic ending. James Herman Banning was born on November 5th, 1900 in Oklahoma. That's got to be really hot in the summertime. You're born before air conditioning in Oklahoma. That's got to be miserable. Okay, so this James Herman Banning, he was born to a farmer, his dad. His dad owned about 160 acres. And his mom was a school teacher. Now, I don't know if she went to school to be a school teacher, but she had a schoolhouse on their property, and the kids in that community would go to that school right there. So ever since James was a kid, with the invention of aeroplanes, aeroflight, he had some kind of a fascination. He always wanted to fly. I mean, who doesn't, right? So he went to high school in Guthrie, Oklahoma. It's a nice little town I've been to. I miss that place. And later on, he was a very good student, and he actually went to Iowa State University. He was one of only 7 black students in the year that he went there, which I believe was 1919. Not many black people going to Iowa State in 1919. Or it could have been 1920. Now, he went to school for electrical engineering. He went for 1 year, and that was it. I don't know if he stopped going because it was boring or he ran out of money. I have no idea. So he decides to open up his own auto repair business. It's called J.H. Banning Auto Repair. He would fix cars, farm equipment, and motorcycles. And while he's doing that, as airplanes become more of, a thing, something that used to be a phenomenon, now it's a thing, he wants to learn how to fly, but there's only one problem. And that problem was that he was black. Yeah, depending on where you were at that time, it would be a problem in certain situations if you were black. And he would try to learn how to fly. It wasn't about money. No, he could pay people to teach him how to fly, but you're black. Yeah, hey, buddy, you're black. You can't learn how to fly because you're black. That's obviously not going to work because you're black. Come on, buddy, you're black. Get out of here. You're black. He's having to deal with that. Discrimination. If you think there's discrimination now, which there is, well, you don't know what discrimination is until you go back 100 years in the past, or even more than that. So he's having a very, very, very rough time finding anybody to teach him how to fly. Now, James is getting really frustrated. He's going nuck and futz. I mean, he really, really wants to learn how to fly, especially when an air show had came into town and he paid somebody for a private tour. So this guy takes James up and flies him around Ames. And after that, He said, I gotta learn how to fly. I gotta get my license. But nobody's giving him a chance. I mean, the feeling that he felt when he was flying, he's like, there's no other thing that I want to do. That's what I want to do. So one day a man comes into his shop with a motorcycle that needs repairs. And James notices that this guy on his jacket, he has aviator wings, which is a pretty clear indication that this man is some form or another of a pilot. So they start talking about whatever. So the guy, his name is Raymond Fishers, and he was a World War I pilot. So they start talking, and James is telling him, yeah, man, the air show that came into town a few months back, man, the guy gave me a tour, and we went flying, and, you know, he did some kind of tricks or whatever. He goes, I always wanted to learn how to fly, but nobody will give me a chance. It's not that I don't have the money. They're just being, you know, racist. So Raymond says, I tell you what, I'll teach you. I'll teach you how to fly. And he says, okay, it's a deal. And over the course of several weeks or several months, Raymond would give James flying lessons. And then one day, he's going for his, you know, usual Saturday lesson. And when he arrives to the little airfield where Raymond would have his plane, he notices that there's a smoldering heap of wreckage by the airport. And like he runs up to it, and it's Raymond's plane. He crashed, and now he was dead. So not only did James now lose a friend because they had become pretty close, but he did not have the required hours of flight time to get his license. So now he's screwed. But after the funeral, he said, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to build my own plane. I mean, I'm a mechanic, so I can do that, right? So there was an auction coming up, and in this auction was a motor from an airplane. And so he buys the motor from an airplane. Okay, so now he's got a motor. And slowly but surely, he would start collecting the different parts of an airplane. He would get a fuselage. He would go to the junkyard and get different wires and just everything. This plane was literally put together with scrap parts. And eventually, he got it running. He got it going. He took it, you know, slow and steady. He didn't start flying it at first. No, this guy's like, well, because I don't want to get killed, but I gotta work up the courage to kind of go. And the people in this town, they would say, oh, there goes James' non-flying plane. And they would kind of laugh at him because it was always parked at this barn. And when he got the plane going, he wasn't flying it at first. He would just kind of taxi it around the field. And then he slowly worked up his courage. He'd kind of take it up a little bit airborne, maybe like 20 feet off the ground, and then land it. Did that a couple times. And then one day he says, screw it, I'm gonna go. And that's what he did. And he just gunned it. And he was flying down the little, not a runway, but the field, and the barn, the fence line's coming up. And it's like, man, it's now or never. You got to pull that stick up, and are you gonna fly, or are you gonna be a little wuss? And he pulled that stick up, and up he went. Up he went, and he started soaring and soaring and soaring, and he's flying. And eventually, he would get good enough and learn to do some tricks, some, loop-de-loop, barrel rolls, stick landings, whatever those terms are. And he would become a licensed pilot. He would become the first black man to hold a license. Or as Kramer from Seinfeld says, yeah. That guy's had an amazing career, hasn't he, Kramer? So now he's a licensed pilot. And he likes to fly on his days off, and he has this shop. And then one day he's reading a newspaper, and somebody, William Powell, is that his name? Some guy that started a flight school, a flight club here in Los Angeles. And he's starting this flight club. Well, and that's going to be kind of a different story for a different video. But this flight club was made in the honor of a woman. I think her name might be Bessie Elizabeth. I can't get her name right now. You'll see it on the screen below. But she unfortunately crashed in Florida. So we're going to do a separate video about her in the near future. So this flight school was named after her. So they needed a flight instructor, and preferably they prefer to hire a black guy because it's mainly a club for black people who, you know, they've kind of gone through what James went through, where no one wants to give him a chance. And as soon as this guy sees the letter, he immediately gets on the phone and calls the school, and he talks to the guy, the head of it. And he literally just kind of packed the suitcase real quick and jumped on the first plane and headed out to Los Angeles. And he sat down, he met with him, and he was hired right on the spot. So that guy would stay at this flight club for, I want to say off the top of my head, is a couple years, teaching people how to fly and stuff like that. So for the next about 2.5, 3 years, he worked at this school, and this school would eventually put on the very first all-black aero show on September 7th, 1931. So things are looking good for James here. However, he has a dream, if you will, a different kind of dream. He wants to be the first black person to fly cross country. Now, Charles Lindbergh has already did it, but there's a problem. See, Charles Lindbergh, he had a lot of money behind him. He had a lot of investors. This guy, James, he has 0 investors. No one's going to give their money to some black guy to fly across the country. That's stupid. So he tells the school, he gives them, he says, listen, I'm out of here. I'm going to fly across the country. I want to do this. But the problem is he doesn't have a plane. Well, you know, at least a plane that, you know, can actually make the trip. So he starts, again, sourcing a plane. One of the guys at the flight club, he had a plane, but it was beat. It looked like Archie's jalopy. So he said, well, okay, well, we got this. So we got a plane. So they ended up having to rebuild the top end and clean out the gas tank, get the rust out, new fuel lines, plugs, wires, all that stuff. Now, it would be a while before they would get this thing up and going. Now, here's another problem. He's broke. This school, they're just barely paying him. He doesn't make a lot of money, right? He ain't doing this for money. He's doing this because he basically enjoys flying. So he would later link up with an airplane mechanic named Thomas Cox Allen. He's a very, very good airplane mechanic, but he's not a pilot. And it's funny because when they first met, they didn't really get along very well. They were pretty much like opposite types of characters. But the guy was down to go on the trip. So they start working on this plane. And before you know it, September 18th, 1932, and it's time. It's go time. They have no money. I mean, they have $25. So they have $25 between them. And so they said, okay, screw it. So they take off, and their first leg of their trip, they would land in Riverside, California. So from Riverside, California, they headed to Tucson, Arizona. Now, again, these guys don't have any money. So this is what they're going to do. They're going, you know, whatever radio stations are picking up their story. Hey, these guys are broke. They're trying to fly across the country. The first black pilots to fly, or first black person to fly across the country. So they would say if anybody wanted to contribute a couple dollars, they could sign their name on their wings. So they would come over here, come over there. People would either like just give them money as a donation for you know, fuel, or, you know, cook them food, let them stay at their house. And they also had to worry about avoiding certain areas of the country where they wouldn't really like black people flying anything. You know, they pictured black people flying under a different set of circumstances, if you get my drift. So they left Tucson, Arizona. They go to Lordsburg, New Mexico. It's getting a little bit windy over here, and they're having issues with the plane, but they're making it okay. So they would go on to El Paso, Texas. People are meeting them. They're signing their names on the plane. They're just making enough money to get to the next spot, which is Midland, Texas. They get to Midland, Texas. Everything is fine until they start flying towards Wichita Falls, Texas. So they're flying over the Guadalupe Mountains, and there is a crazy amount of fog. They basically can't see. Gee, hope we're not going to be flying into this mountain. That's got to be scary. You have no real flight instruments. You're basically flying blind. So they made it through. And then eventually they made it to El Reno, Oklahoma, and that's where James' brother lives. So he gave them a couple bucks. They chilled out for a while. And then from there, they flew to Oklahoma City. And then they flew to Tulsa. And then they flew to Carthage, Missouri. And then they're on their way from Carthage to St. Louis, and they start experiencing some engine problems. That's got to be scary. You're flying, and then your engine starts kind of sputtering. So they barely make it to St. Louis, and the engine's blown. Okay. They don't have any money, guys. Again, they don't have any money. But by this time now, their story is making the waves through the newspapers around the country. So a flight school in St. Louis, they offered to help fix the plane. And so this part of the story is pretty funny. So later on. So they fix the plane, they rebuild the engine, the entire engine, and they do it for free. So they left St. Louis and they would fly to Columbus, Ohio. And then everything's going good. They fly from Columbus, Ohio. They make one more stop somewhere between there and Pittsburgh. So they finally get to Pittsburgh. Now they're getting kind of closer to the East Coast. So they're making good time. Except, well, they had to make a crash landing in a field in Cambridge, Ohio. By the way, Cambridge, Ohio, that's the same place where I almost got arrested for supposedly stealing a $5 pair of headphones. We'll talk about that story again some other time. Anyways, so they crash landed. They didn't crash, but they just kind of landed unexpectedly in Cambridge. So they get that fixed, and then they start heading to Pittsburgh. They barely get to Pittsburgh, and then their engine dies. Right? I'm not exactly sure what happened. It wasn't a major malfunction, but it was enough where they couldn't take off. So this guy, he hears their story on the radio and he says, all right, hey, listen, I'll make a deal with you. He goes, I'll fix every single thing on your plane that you can think of that needs to be fixed. We'll do it right now on one condition. I'm going to give you some flyers that say, vote for FDR for president. I want you to drop them over the city when you leave. 150,000 flyers dropping over the city. And he says, yeah, sure. No problem. So he drops the flyers and off they go. They would next go to York, Pennsylvania. After York, they're going to Philadelphia, and they're basically home free. They stop in Trenton, and their last stop would be somewhere on Long Island, New York. And by this time now, the mayor of New York, he's waiting for them. And there's kind of like a big, welcome little shindig press conference thing. And they made it. It took them 3 weeks, 410 gallons of fuel. And they flew across the country with the help of just average day citizens, helping them fix their plane, helping them with repairs, helping, feed them, giving them a place to stay. So flying hours, I think it was just about 42 hours of actual flying time, but it took them 3 weeks because of money. So they made it to New York, and the Cotton Club hosts a party for them, and everything is fantastic. Now, here's the problem. You got to get that plane back. Now, that plane would only make it back to Pennsylvania, and it was having issues. So they landed the plane. So he said, you know what, this is what we're going to do. I'll come back for the plane later. And, you know, I'm going to just head back out to California, because now, you know, maybe James can make a little bit of money, because now his name is all over different newspapers across the country. And some aero show down in San Diego, somewhere in that area, they invited him to, you know, come to the show. Except, well, they don't want him to fly because he's black. No, hey, no, you're black. We just noticed you're black, so we just want you to make an appearance. We don't really want you flying anything, because you might, I don't know, crash the plane because you're black or something like that. Who knows? Who knows? So on February 5th, 1933, James gets to the air show. And again, they're not going to let him fly because he's black. That's it. It's just racism. So he's going to be a guest, I guess, not even a co-pilot, just kind of a guest on a plane, on this little two-seater plane with this guy, this Navy pilot. His name is Albert Burkhart. So I don't know what Albert was thinking, but as they were flying and he's doing his little maneuvers, his little tricks, he all of a sudden guns the plane straight down, speeding towards the ground. And I guess he's going to do one of those things where he pulls up at the last second, and him probably, you know, having this guy in his plane, he's like, oh yeah, you think you're big and bad because you flew across the country? Well, you know, let me show him some tricks. Well, the only trick he showed him is how to kill oneself and take another person's life with them. They crashed right into the ground at about 150 miles an hour. Bam, right into the ground. Horrified spectators could not believe that thunderous sound, and that huge fireball that made when that plane just hit contact with that ground. Is just 4 months after flying across the country, being the first black man to do that, and some knucklehead, you know, takes his own life. And yours as well. Just one of those weird, sad stories. And this is the final resting place of James Herman Banning, first black person to earn a pilot's license and first black person to fly across the country. Well, and Thomas Allen Cox too. I guess you can kind of count him. I mean, he was there, but he was not the pilot, so you know what I'm saying. But anyways, rest in peace to Mr. Banning. Sad story, sad ending, but through perseverance and dedication, he lived his dreams. Rest in peace. Okay, guys, we're out of here. Catch up with you on the next video. Peace out.